Mr. Tremosa.
Grazie, Presidente Gualtieri. Good afternoon, Commissioner Vestager. Welcome again to this House, to the Parliament, European Parliament. First of all, let me say that I support your job on Apple and Amazon in Luxembourg because it's a question of tax fairness. So good job as you are doing in many other fields. I promise that I have not spoken before with Kate Swinburne because I have one of my two questions on the Corporate Securities Purchase Program. So, because I wanted to ask you in this respect, because as you will find in our report, many colleagues of this committee are worried about the competition in the aviation field in Europe. For instance, 44 MEPs of this committee, it means a large majority, we signed a letter last June asking the ECB for transparency. We wanted to know which central banks were buying private debt of which companies. And after being in the press, we got a list, and I know that you have this list since July, and we discovered, for instance, that Ireland, the Central Bank of Ireland, was buying Ryanair debt. And I don't want to discuss the national interest of these purchases, but I think that, in my opinion, it breaks the level playing field because we can then say we criticize, for instance, Italy because it's helping with the state aid Alitalia. But Banco of Italia has not bought Alitalia debt. So the ECB, with its program, is creating a distortion in the level playing field. Or this is the thing that many of us have. No? So it's easy for us to say in our report, we don't like what is happening with Alitalia or Air Berlin or Lufthansa, but on the other side, we have this problem. So please, your services should take into study this question because we are going to be active on the competition report, so I wanted to know your opinion on that. And not to give you time to respond, on Google, the speed of some investigations, because we know that... You use a lot of your time, more than your time. Okay, so Can you, in 10 minutes, go quick to the point? In 10 seconds, not 10 seconds. Yeah, okay. Do you think that we need to balance the speed of investigations in the antitrust cases with the need to preserve the right of defense of companies in the antitrust authorities? And on the Google case, you said on China that more antitrust cases were coming. So can you explain a little bit more on that? And finally, regarding shopping, I hear from complainants that they are not satisfied with the auction mechanism offered, that it's quite similar to Almunia. Are you happy with this? Thank you very much.
First, as I said, as a response to Kate on the question of ECB, I would like to come back to that. Just one thing to keep in mind is that governments can invest on market terms. And as long as they do that on market terms, it's not state aid. Of course, it always depends, well, what is then market terms? Because we have had a number of cases where governments come to us and say, we would like to invest on market terms. Would you take a decision so that we can see that it is no aid, so that we don't get into trouble later? And sometimes also these cases becomes quite complex because market terms is not necessarily 2% or 3%. If it's a risk, then the interest rate should be much, much higher. And that can happen as well. So there are different issues at stake here when we see governments buying bonds here or there. It depends on how it's done. On the ECB side of things, as I said, I don't have a qualified response to you. On antitrust as such, in my experience, there is an asymmetry. Because when we do merger control, we have sort of aligned interests when it comes to timing. Of course, we have different motives. the company would like the merger to go through. We would like to make sure that the merger doesn't harm competition. And these are actually two different perspectives. But what we share is that we have to work fast, and the companies want to work with us in order to make sure that the merger can happen, and it can happen as soon as possible. The asymmetry comes into when you look, for instance, at a cartel investigation. Then the parties are not always so happy to work with us because we're investigating a secret cartel that may result in a fine. Look at the truck cartel. The fine for the 6 companies in total is almost 4 billion euros. So their reluctance to work with us, provide the things that we need, respond quickly as possible on our request for information, that's not at all the same thing as when we do a merger procedure. And this, of course, makes it somewhat tricky to work with deadlines. And it is very important. I think it is crucial, since we, of course, live in a union based on the rule of law, that we make, the quality that allows the companies to defend themselves. The thing is that we need to speed up, and we do that in every part of our processes. For instance, to make sure that access to file is facilitated and easy. Because when we send out a statement of objection, that is also giving access to file. The company can see the evidence that we hold against them. And if that is processed in a lean, efficient, clear way, then the entire procedure is much easier than it would otherwise be. This, of course, is sometimes a challenge to our budget because we need to have the sufficient IT tools. We need to have people with skills that may not be of use for us 5 or 10 years ago. So we need also to invest in our tools to speed us up in our investigative procedures. Because when we have to go these amounts of data, in the Google case, we went through 5.2 terabytes of data. It takes some time if you don't have the sufficient data power just to do that. So, of course, it is a matter of very high priority, but I don't think that deadlines is the answer to that. I think well-invested resources in efficient tools and processes, that's part of the answer. Last but not least, I hear the same from some of the complainants in the Google case. I have met with several of them to hear their concerns, to get their insights, because, we don't work in an ivory tower, we work in the marketplace. And of course, we have taken no decision yet as to whether or not Google is compliant, but we are monitoring it very, very closely. Because it's not the question of an auction in itself that's the triggering point here, it is how it's working. And in that, of course, we use our technical experts, we talk with market participants, and we look for ourselves. And I think that is our task, and it will remain on our working desk for some time to come.
Thank you.